Welcome to MCLE This Week. I'm your host, program attorney Bruce Richard. On this episode of MCLE This Week, we are joined by MCLE's Executive Director, Mark Rotondo. Mark, welcome to the podcast. Uh, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your career path before joining MCLE in 2023, right?
2023, January 1st was my first day at MCLE. So I'm going to try to keep my 35-year career and try to boil it down to about 5 minutes. But when I start to go on a little bit too much, hopefully the person will be able to edit some of that out. I started my career, interestingly, in finance. I worked at Fidelity Investments. When I graduated high school, I had a football scholarship, and I was that proverbial fish out of water. And I really didn't last very long at my college and came back home and worked at Fidelity Investments. I then did a little bit of traveling and worked at the former Shawmut Bank, and then I worked at the Everett Savings Bank, which is now the Eagle Bank. And I got laid off a couple of times. I'm drawing you back to the 1980s. And so after I got laid off, I got a job and worked as a longshoreman. Now, many people have no idea what a longshoreman is, but I worked in a shipyard. And when I worked in a shipyard, I operated heavy equipment, cranes and Euclids and all different types of equipment in the shipyard. And at one point, helped the loading and unloading of ships. And a fortunate, not unfortunate, industrial accident in which I fell 20 feet and got knocked unconscious for almost 6 hours, caused me to have significant injuries, which included 3 compression fractures, 5 ruptured discs, and all of that was done before my 22nd birthday. And so from that fortunate event, I was one of those dislocated workers who was collecting workman's compensation. I had a little bit of a walker with tennis balls on it, and I went to school at Bunker Hill Community College, where I got my confidence back and then proceeded to get my bachelor's degree at Suffolk. In between with my rehabilitation, I actually ran for public office and became, at the time, the youngest person elected to public office in the city of Everett, where I grew up, and served as the vice chairperson of the Everett School Committee and worked on the landmark Education Reform Act. I had a short stint working in the Speaker of the House office, and from there began my career in higher education at Bunker Hill Community College, where I worked as a technical assistant in the Learning Center, and then eventually went on and got my master's at the McCormick Institute at UMass Boston, and elevated to the Director of Institutional Research at Bunker Hill Community College, where I worked on the legislative performance measures and became a semi-expert in the area of learning outcome assessment. That takes me through the 90s, and I decided in 1998 that I was going to run for governor's council. For those who may not know what governor's council is, governor's council goes back to colonial times. And in the state of Massachusetts, the governor's council is the body that works with the governor's office on the appointment of judges and magistrates in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And here at MCLE, we've been fortunate to have some people come and actually teach on the governor's council. When I ran for governor's council, I had a little bit of conflict because Bunker Hill's a state agency. And so I went and began a new career at Suffolk University in the College of Arts and Sciences, where I had got my bachelor's degree. And as an alumni, I worked directly for the dean of the College of Arts and Science as his data analyst and educational researcher. I did that for a few years and then became an assistant dean in the College of Arts and Sciences, but at the same time began thinking about a career in law enforcement And so in 1999, I got an appointment into the Massachusetts State Police Academy. And a fortunate event, the birth of my first daughter occurred. And so I actually had deferred that first appointment. And I was accepted into Suffolk Law School in the fall of 2000, in which I began to take my first year law school classes as an evening student, working during the day at Suffolk University. After 9/11, I got my second appointment into the Massachusetts State Police Academy, and I had another fortunate event. I successfully completed the first year of law school, and my wife was pregnant with my second daughter. And so at that time, I made the decision that I would continue in law school, and that's what I did. I
Right.
became and passed the bar exam. I'm one of those successful first-time bar passers in February of 2005 and was admitted to the bar in June of 2005. Since then, I've had a solo practice, a general practitioner. I've had my parallel career. I went and continued to work at Suffolk until 2012. At this time, I also began to teach. I was teaching mathematics and statistics, which I've taught now for 30 plus years. And I also teach economics and management and in the MBA program at a couple of different institutions. In 2012, I left Suffolk and went to Cambridge College. I became associate provost and then eventually provost, and then eventually vice president of innovation and strategic initiatives, all the while maintaining my solo practice, which included family law, construction law, a lot of litigation, a lot of criminal law. And in the end, I was balancing 10 to 12 trials while I was working at Cambridge College in Suffolk as well as teaching. And so I was fortunate to manage all of that and maintain my sanity. And eventually, someone pointed me in the direction of MCLE and told me that the executive director who had been here for 45 years was retiring, and that this was a better fit for me than a college presidency, which I was looking at, because it allowed me to take my love of education and it allowed me to take my love of the law. I've had some areas sometimes thinking I was going to go into a different field. I became a licensed superintendent of schools. I had another stint on the Winthrop School Committee, and I have packed in all of my political ambitions, and I have now been focusing my time on MCLE. So I think I might have been a little bit more than 5 minutes, but that's about a 35-year career.
Yeah. You mentioned the previous executive director being here for 45 years. So what was it like transitioning into this role after somebody who's been in the role for 45 years? I mean, Jack Riley wasn't really the executive director. He was just Jack, and the title disappeared. So what was it like stepping into this?
MCLE is an interesting organization because I mentioned Jack, but let me take a step back and mention the founder, Dick Milstein. And so what
Right.
makes MCLE unique is that the founder who founded the organization in 1969 and from many accounts nationally is recognized as one of the founders of continuing legal education nationally. He was a phone call away. He was one of the first people I met at MCLE. And only recently, after attaining 99 years old, did he pass away. But Dick was directly involved. And with Jack, MCLE really was cast in Jack's image. Jack is a reflection, or the organization is a reflection of MCLE. And trying to come in, for me, I was looking at a founder and an executive director, and I said to each of them, I see myself as the transition. executive director. And when I say that, people, I need to be very careful because I don't want them to think transition means short term. I'm the link between the founder and the person that the organization's image it was shaped in, and try to get us to the next 50 years for MCLE. I'm that transition. And so in the organization, I inherited one that, as you know, CLE is not mandatory in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, it's voluntary. And so, unlike mandatory states, people come to MCLE because of the value added, because of the excellence in the resources. I myself, as a solo practitioner, knew about MCLE because one of the first manuals I bought was the district court manual.
Right.
I took several programs because, as a solo practitioner, I needed to better understand things like family law, and those dreaded child support guidelines was something I learned at MCLE. All of those are part of the history, the legacy, the foundation of MCLE. Following Jack, the next step is if we were building MCLE today, not 1991, when
Right.
we bought this magnificent building, how would we build MCLE today? Would we build it the same as 1991, or would we build it a little bit different? I believe we would build it a little bit different.
Right.
And coming out of higher education and being the former vice president for innovation and strategic initiatives, I believe that's why the board hired me, because I could take some of the innovations that I was learning in higher education, such as scenario-based learning and also utilizing simulations, to add that to the repertoire of different programming and resources MCLE has.
Right. So what was the biggest surprise that you had when you sort of stepped into the role? I mean, MCLE is a little bit different from the college and university environment.
How much was how much was being created and done through the assistance of volunteers?
Right.
Volunteers are the lifeblood of MCLE. It shows, it proves that Massachusetts attorneys and even New England attorneys who teach and write for MCLE really have an altruistic contribution to make to the bar in Massachusetts and in New England. 2,200 volunteers being managed by a team of 4 or 5 staff attorneys. That is what amazed me the most. Coming out of higher education, there was a provost, an associate provost, several deans, program chairs, cadre of full-time faculty, and a cadre of part-time faculty. This organization is being done through the volunteerism of very dedicated individuals in the bar. That is what surprised me most.
Yeah, I look at it and just from my perspective as one of the program attorneys, I mean, we ran well over 300 programs last year. There are two program attorneys. We are not the ones putting on these programs. We are the one reaching out to folks who are, you know, whose generosity has allowed us to put these things together. Um, so Mark, for listeners who may not have the visibility into how MCLE operates behind the scenes, what does the day-to-day role of the executive director actually look like?
I am a jack of all trades and a master of none. And so on any given day, I could be the executive director talking to our board and to our volunteers about the strategy and the future direction of MCLE. Occasionally, I can take on the role of our chief financial officer, looking at our financials and doing the things that make executive directors very nervous, making sure that we have enough revenue to cover our expenses. I could be speaking to multiple nonprofits who are looking to get program attorneys a scholarship so that they can take part in some of MCLE's programming as well as take advantage of our publications and our resources. And I traditionally serve as our our chief fundraising officer. And so I'm talking to donors and trying to raise money for MCLE scholarships and general operations, and then drawing on my grant writing experience. I can be the grant writer to a funder asking for something to fund one of our programs or a scholarship for MCLE. Most recently, I created the Dive Fellowship, which is an opportunity to begin to recruit volunteers to come in and learn how to teach and write a CLE. And so in that, we were successful in getting a grant from the Eastern Bank Foundation, and we're looking to launch that in February of 27, 8 to 12 fellows who will go through a structured program. I developed the program and I will lead it, and I'll be looking to our board members to mentor the fellows throughout the year.
I think it's an exciting new initiative for us here at MCLE, just because I know a lot of times when we're reaching out to folks, it is very much I'm happy to do this. What do I need to do? It's like, great, I'm glad you're willing to do this. Let me tell you how. So you end up spending the first month explaining to them how this is going to go, explaining the deadlines, explaining what's required, at which point I know that at least some of them are thinking to themselves, oh, I've made a terrible mistake. I don't have time for this now. I should have done this 2 months ago, or I should be trying to push this off for another 3 months when I've got a lull. So it's going to be nice having this sort of thing behind us to assist folks who are a little bit new on that end. So
What makes MCLE so unique is that when attorneys are either teaching or writing for us, they're not relying on the Socratic method that we all learned from when we went to law school.
hmm.
They're communicating experience, expertise, knowledge in a practical manner. It's not how do I learn to think like a lawyer? It's how do I learn how to practice better as an attorney? And when you have 2,200 volunteers, you're getting all of that experience, all of those practical tips. In this conversation, I'm going to sit down today, Bruce, and I'm going to talk to our director of operations, Annette, and I'm going to ask her to list all of the experience of the volunteers just from last year.
Right.
And if I added all of that up, my hypothesis would be we're close to somewhere around 10,000 years of experience. Think about that level of expertise at the tip of watching a program on a webinar or coming into our beautiful conference center, getting a publication either in or in print, or buying our online pass subscription
Mhm.
and having all of that at the touch of your computer. That experience, that value added, is something that I would arguably say within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and even in New England makes MCLE one of the top three CLE providers in the country.
Advance your practice with the MCLE Online Pass. For one monthly subscription fee, you can access everything MCLE has online: live and on-demand webcasts, ebooks, forms, checklists, and more. Start your free trial today at mcle.org/onlinepass.
So we've talked about the volunteers. So as we dance close to this being an ad for people to volunteer at MCLE, I'm going to follow it up with another question. So from your perspective, with all of your background beyond even just MCLE, how can teaching enhance a lawyer's practice or career?
Three things. One, better communication. You are able to communicate to an audience in a way that is communicating meaning. That helps you in terms of thinking through how you would communicate to a client. how you would write to a client. And so
Right.
communication is enhanced. Two, presentation. Getting up and presenting among your peers is something that is critically important. You get to react to their body language. You get to react to the questions. Um, Third, it helps build your brand. By building your brand, you're more than just an attorney, you're an attorney scholar. You're someone who is contributing to the bar in a meaningful way and doing so in an academic setting. So, those three values I see as something that crosses within your own practice.
Right. Okay. So in addition to the leadership role here at MCLE, I know that you also teach courses at Suffolk and at Cambridge College. How did you first get involved in teaching and what drew you to it?
Yeah, great question. So at the time I took my first job at Bunker Hill, the center where I worked, which was the Learning Center, also had a concept called classroom without walls. For those who want a history lesson on education, you can see this is something that evolved out of UMass Amherst in the late 60s and the 70s. And so individuals would come into the center and they would take a course that was self-directed. I was a tutor. And so I was always very good at mathematics and statistics. And so the first courses I began to teach, or excuse me, tutor, was math and statistics. I went and got my master's degree in public affairs at UMass at the McCormick Institute. And in the summer of 1995, after I got my master's degree, a faculty member, it happened by chance, was ill and couldn't teach a developmental math course. And when I say developmental, remember this is community college, this was math where you may have had adults who had been out of school for 30 years and
Right.
just because of being out of practice couldn't remember how to do fractions and decimals.
Yeah.
And so because of that unfortunate event to that faculty member, I was offered the course to teach. And so from that, that was my first course in the summer of 1995, in which I taught that developmental course. I loved it. I thought that this was going to be my career path, that I would go on and become a teacher, a professor in math and statistics only, and started working with other faculty members to develop the Math 1 concept at the community college. And so that then began my parallel track into some administration. And eventually, since 1995, I've been teaching now 31 years this June at Bunker Hill. I still teach on Saturday mornings, whether it is a developmental math course or an algebra course that is teaching linear equations or quadratics or statistics. Uh, and while I no longer teach at Suffolk, I've been teaching in the MBA program. I developed the online program at Cambridge College. I was part of the group that acquired the former New England College of Business and Finance, which was the online. And so I've developed 8 or 9 online courses for MBA program at Cambridge College, which is now part of Bay Path University. So I still teach. I still love teaching, and I find great enjoyment in it. I would like to think that my students find great enjoyment, even though they're studying math, statistics, and economics.
So, Mark, I see we're coming up to the end here. So I wanted to ask you quickly, your latest fundraising initiative, it's the 2026 MCLE Founders Day campaign. Can you tell us a little bit about what the initiative is and what makes it so special for this year?
I can. So, Founders Day, MCLE was founded on May 6, 1969. And when I came in, I had inherited from my predecessor an excellent annual appeal. Coming out of higher education, I was used to having a Founders Day campaign. And so I had learned the founding date of MCLE. I contacted Dick Milstein. I contacted Jack Riley and said, I would like to do a Founders Day to re-engage past donors who have donated to MCLE, but may have forgotten the reason why we are special and why MCLE needs their continued support. And so from that, we created the Founders Day campaign and launched the first May 6, 2023. It is a letter that is co-signed by myself, Jack, and Dick. So all three of us have signed that letter.
Mm-hmm.
This year, Dick was supposed to reach 100 years old.
Right.
And so when I talked about the concept of Founders Day this year with Jack and Dick, I asked Dick his permission not to do anything that was going to be in a manner degrade who Dick Milstein is. I didn't want to sell on him. I said, we would like to celebrate your 100th birth. And he said, just as long as it's not about me reaching 100 years old and it's about MCLE. And so it's the final letter the three of us have signed.
Yeah.
And so we have begun the process of the Founders Day. We're in that silent phase. And after he passed, I spoke to his administrator. I explained to her that this year we don't have to do Founders Day. I showed her the last letter the three of us, Jack, Dick, and I, had signed, and she gave us her blessing, no pun intended, and said that if it's the last thing that Dick wanted, then we want you to use that letter if it's the last thing he signed. She and I drafted some language for a postscript letting people know that Dick had passed.
Right.
So we are actively in the process of that Founders Day. If we can use this podcast as an appeal, everyone, on May 6th, if you have an opportunity, we would appreciate your continued support. Every dollar raised goes into our programming, our publications, and our operations, and it supports people in the bar who may otherwise not be able to attend a program or to obtain a publication.
All right. Mark, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us here today.
Bruce, I appreciate the time. Thank you for having me, and I hope I didn't go on too much.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Mark.
Take care now. Bye-bye.
The MCLE This Week podcast is a production of Massachusetts Continuing Legal Education in Boston, Massachusetts. For sponsorship opportunities, email us at podcast@mcle.org.